It starts so subtly you barely notice. A sentence in present tense, he stands at the edge of the cliff, wind screaming in his ears. And then without warning you are dragged backward. He remembered the first time he saw this place, a child, gripping his father's hand. Past, present, past again. But somehow, it works. Not because it follows the rules, but because it follows emotion. Mixed tenses, when used deliberately, are one of the most underappreciated weapons in narrative writing. They create rhythm, suspense, and immersion. And the craziest part, most of us experience this trick every single day without even realizing it. From novels and movies to documentaries and true crime podcasts, the best storytellers play with time not by traveling through it, but by shifting their verbs. So, why does this technique keep you glued to the screen? It's simple. The present tense feels immediate, urgent, like something is happening right now and you need to pay attention. But the past tense brings weight, reflection. It gives a moment time to breathe and lets you feel its consequences. When these two forces collide, something electric happens. The story becomes layered, the characters become haunted by things that have happened and terrified of things that are still coming. This is especially true in emotionally charged narratives. Think about stories dealing with trauma, faith, loss, or love. You can't separate the characters' past from their present because it's all still happening to them. Their flashbacks aren't just memory. They're lived again in real time because they haven't healed yet. And when a story shifts tenses to show this, you don't just understand the character, you become them. Take any scene where someone is witnessing something traumatic. The narrative might begin in present tense to make you feel the moment. She's watching them lower the body into the ground. But suddenly, a memory takes over. She screamed when they called her name last year, saying the accident had taken everything. You didn't ask to go there. You weren't ready for the emotional gut punch. But now it's too late. You've already felt it. That's the trap. That's the brilliance. The best writers and screenwriters use these transitions, like knife cuts, clean, sudden, precise, not with big warning signs like back then or years ago. No, they let the tense carry you without you even realizing it until you're deep inside the character's world, unsure where you are, but feeling everything. In The Chosen. This storytelling choice is all over the place, especially in the later seasons. One moment, you're inside Jesus' final 24 hours, everything happening in real time. The next moment, a character is swallowed by memory. What he said, what he did, what it meant. And the switch is so smooth, you don't resist it. You let the past in because it matters now more than ever. This technique isn't just clever, it's human. Our minds naturally bounce between what's happening and what has happened. You're at work, thinking about last week's argument. You're walking, but replaying a conversation from last night. That's how we live. So when stories mimic this, it feels real. And real is what keeps people watching. The suspense comes from not knowing when it will happen, when the timeline will twist, when that quiet memory will suddenly crash into the present scene and change everything. It builds tension like a ticking clock, because every memory revealed now might be the key to what happens next. And once your audience realizes this, that past events in a story are more than just backstory, that they're fueling the present, they stop watching passively. They start digging deeper, listening harder, looking for every shift in tone, every clue in phrasing, and that's how a simple tense change turns your story into a thriller without needing guns or chases or explosions. There's a moment in every powerful story where time starts to crack. The character is walking through the present, but their mind is somewhere else entirely. And the moment the tense shifts, you shift too. You're no longer grounded in one timeline. You're floating between moments. You're watching someone fall apart, not just in the now, but in all the thens that made this now inevitable. This is where mixed tenses become more than a trick. They become a mirror of the character's psychology. Because when you're going through grief or guilt or dread, time doesn't feel linear anymore. You're not just living in the moment. You're reliving the pain, replaying the choice, rethinking what could have been different. And stories that mirror this by jumping between past and present feel brutally true. There's suspense in that chaos. You're no longer sure what's happening in real time and what's memory. And maybe that's the point. Because for the character, it's all real. The trauma never left. The regret never faded. And the story isn't giving you clean lines or comfortable transitions anymore. It's blending timelines like wounds that won't close. You're trapped with them, and every time the tense switches, you feel that instability, that pressure. that unraveling. Think about this. When a sentence starts with, he walks into the room, it feels like we're with him. We're moving beside him. But if the very next line is, he had seen this painting before, back when his brother was alive, suddenly the walls of time dissolve. You're no longer in the room, you're in his memory. But you're not looking at it from a distance. You're inside it, through his eyes, and when the scene snaps back to he reaches for the frame, you're breathless. Because you've just time traveled through a sentence. And now the painting means something far deeper. That's how mixed tenses turn ordinary moments into emotional bombs. This happens again and again in shows like The Chosen, where characters are constantly haunted by what has happened and terrified of what's coming. You'll notice it more if you rewatch. A disciple speaks in present tense about what Jesus is doing now, but then, mid-sentence, the weight of the past interrupts. We followed him because he changed us. That sudden past tense isn't just grammar, it's grief. It's love. It's fear that the man they believed in may soon be gone. And the tension, it doesn't come from music or action. It comes from memory, from emotional timing, from the unspoken truth that the past is hunting them mad. They know it. That's what mixed tenses do. They make you feel hunted by the story. You're constantly wondering, is this happening now? Or is this a scar from before? Or worse, is this a glimpse of what's to come? Because sometimes the shift in tense isn't about memory. It's about foreshadowing. And that's when the suspense goes off the charts. One line might read, she walks toward the edge, the wind screaming in her ears. Present tense, urgent real, but then later, no one would find her footprints. Boom. Past tense, future implication. And just like that, you know something terrible is coming. The story hasn't told you what, but it's already happened. It just hasn't caught up to you yet. That's the genius of blending past and present. You create echoes that ring ahead. You plant shadows where no one expects them. And your audience. They lean forward. They stop blinking. Because suddenly, the story isn't just about what's happening. It's about what already did, or what will. The emotional thrill doesn't just come from what you see, it comes from what the structure suggests. Writers who understand this use it to devastating effect. They layer their scenes with dread and memory, hinting at truths that haven't been said yet, but will be. And once the audience knows this game is being played, they can't look away. Because every sentence might be the one that breaks the timeline wide open. And just like that, a story that felt simple becomes loaded. Every word is a clue. Every tense switch is a trapdoor. Every pause might drop you into something deeper. We're used to thinking that action builds suspense. But time is what builds dread. And when the past keeps crashing into the present, you can't run from the consequences. You're forced to feel them again and again and again. This is how you make your audience ache for characters. Not just through dialogue, not just through plot, but through structure, through how time moves. It's easy to underestimate what tense really does. We think it's just about grammar rules. Past is for things that already happened. Present is for what's happening now. Simple, right? But in the hands of a skilled storyteller, tense isn't a rule. It's a trap. And once you fall into it, there's no way out until the story lets you go. You see, the most gripping narratives don't follow a straight line. They wind, they twist, they blur what's real and what's remembered. And in those moments where time fractures, when a writer shifts from present to past, or past to present, you fracture too. Not physically, but emotionally. Because suddenly, you're in a place where everything matters at once. The choices that were made, the pain that followed, the danger that still lies ahead. This isn't just a style. It's strategy, and the tension that comes from it. It's unlike anything else. Let's break it down. Imagine a character in the middle of a crisis. Let's say he's running, feet pounding against the gravel, breath sharp and fast. You're in it. You feel the panic. But then he hadn't run like this since that night in the alley. The blood, the sirens, the silence. Now, you're not just running with him. You're running from something. From a memory that's never healed. And the weight of that past inserted in just a few words makes every present moment heavier, more dangerous, more alive. This is what mixed tenses do best. They don't just show you what's happening, they show you why it matters. A lot of writers make the mistake of separating timelines too cleanly. They'll block out flashbacks. They'll insert obvious cues like 10 years earlier. But that creates distance. It tells your audience, this part is separate, so don't feel it too deeply. But when you blend the tenses, when you weave past into present, it becomes unavoidable. The memory collides with the moment. And suddenly, It's all one scene. One timeline, one emotion. It's like trauma. It never waits its turn. It doesn't knock politely. It barges in. Mid-conversation, mid-meal, mid-kiss, and the people we care about in stories. They live like that too. Haunted, triggered, stuck in moments they thought they escaped. When a story reflects this through tense, it stops being just a story. It becomes truthful. And that truth, it's what creates suspense. Because the moment the past invades the now, you stop trusting the timeline. You start wondering, what else is about to rise up from underneath? What memory, what regret, what secret is ticking just beneath the surface? That ticking, that's suspense. In shows like The Chosen, this is done masterfully. You'll see a conversation in the present peaceful, even tender, but the words, they carry shadows because of what's already been endured, what's already been said. The tension isn't just in the dialogue, it's in the timing of when the past is allowed to return. Sometimes, the show cuts into a scene with a flashback. Other times, it's more subtle. A shift in phrasing, a sentence that betrays a memory, a look that says, I'm not really her, I'm back there. And the audience, they feel it before they know it. That's the secret. Suspense doesn't come from what's said. It comes from what's implied, what's buried in the structure. And mixed tenses are the perfect way to bury meaning without the audience realizing until it's too late. Because once a story trains you to notice the shifts in time, you become paranoid. Every line feels loaded, every scene could turn on you, and that's where the thrill comes in. You start reading between the lines, listening for the ghost in the grammar, watching for the crack in the timeline. And the story rewards you for that attention. Think about how we experience fear in real life. We don't just fear what's happening now, we fear what happened before, and what might happen again. Our minds flash backward and forward without warning. So when a story mimics that, it feels more terrifying. Not because the monster's in the room, but because you remember the last time it was. And maybe it never really left. That's the chilling power of time when it's fractured. And tense shifts let you fracture time without warning. One moment, the scene is solid. The next, the floor beneath you is gone. In thrillers, in emotional dramas, even in stories of faith or sacrifice, this technique pulls the audience in deeper than any plot twist ever could. Because you're not just following a story, you're navigating a mind, a memory, a moment so powerful it refuses to stay in its place. And that's when you realize something important. Mixed tenses don't just build suspense for the audience, they build suspense for the characters themselves. Because every shift is a reminder they're not safe. Not from what happened, not from what's coming, and definitely not from the guilt, fear, or longing that follows them like a shadow. By now, you've felt it, the shift, the flicker between what is and what was. But here's where things get more twisted. Because once a story has pulled you into its fractured timeline, it starts doing something even more unsettling. It creates echoes, moments that repeat, phrases that return, sentences that carry new meaning because of what came before. And here's the kicker. It's all done through tense. This is where mixed tenses stop just being a stylistic choice and start becoming a form of emotional recursion. A loop, not in structure but in feeling. You're not just moving from past to present anymore. You're circling back. You're being reminded again and again that something never truly ended. That something said once softly in the background is now screaming at full volume in the present. Let's look at how that works. Imagine a character whispering in episode 1. He said he'd come back. Past tense. It feels final, distant, maybe even delusional. But 10 episodes later, when the storm is raging and all hope seems lost, that same line returns, but this time, in present tense, he says he's coming. Suddenly, that old memory isn't distant. It's alive. It's breathing down your neck, and what used to feel like grief now feels like prophecy. That transformation, that chill that runs down your spine, it's all in the tense. When the past becomes the present, we're forced to refeel everything. Not just remember it, feel it, as if it's happening again. Because in a way it is, that's what echoing through tense does. It reactivates emotion, and it works on both sides. Present events, when described in past tense, become mournful. They feel like loss, like something is already over even though it's still happening. That's the tension watching something beautiful in progress, but knowing it will soon become was. It's the emotional equivalent of watching someone you love walk away, even while they're still in the room. In The Chosen, this technique hits hardest in season 6, where nearly every scene is haunted by the knowledge of what's coming. The characters speak in present tense. He's with us. He's not going anywhere. But the audience, we know the future. We've seen it. We're not just viewers, we're mourners. We're witnesses of a moment slipping away in real time. And when the show switches back to past tense, he was with us. The grief lands like a hammer. Because we were just there. It wasn't a distant memory, it was 5 minutes ago. And now it's already gone. That's why these shifts are so powerful. Because they manipulate emotional time, not chronological time. Not cause and effect, but how long something feels. And when you blend past and present, you stretch moments. You freeze emotions. You force your audience to sit inside something long after its ended door, long before it has even begun. It also changes the meaning of dialogue. Let's say a character says, "I trust you." Strong, present tense, full of hope. But later in the story they say, "I trusted you." Same sentence, different tense. Entirely new meaning. That one letter carries betrayal, pain, a story that has already broken. And when those two moments echo against each other in the audience's memory, it creates a third experience. Not past, not present, but wait, a feeling of finality that didn't need a plot twist, just a timeline twist. This is the deeper game that mixed tenses are playing. Not just moving events around, but changing the emotional gravity of the story. Present tense makes us live it. Past tense makes us mourn it. Future tense, that one's a promise or a threat. And when you layer them together, you're not telling a story anymore. You're weaving a net, catching your audience in an emotional loop that keeps tightening. Because once you've shown a moment in the present, then echoed it in the past, the audience starts waiting for the third beat. And that's where suspense thrives, in the pause between what happened, what's happening, and what might happen again. It's like hearing a melody once, it's nice. Twice, it's familiar. But when it returns the third time, in a different key, in a darker tone, you feel it. You recognize it. You react to it before you even understand why. That's what happens when tense becomes pattern. You begin to anticipate the shifts. You expect the story to break its own rules. And that expectation, that tension, it keeps your audience leaning forward, waiting for the next crack, the next flicker in the timeline, the next sentence that pulls them back into a memory or pushes them forward into fate. This technique also makes stories feel bigger because they don't live in one moment. They echo across multiple points in time. They carry their own mythology. And when a narrative keeps referring back to its own moments, but through different tenses, it feels like prophecy, like destiny, like everything was always heading to this point. That's when storytelling becomes unforgettable. When you're not just moved by what happens, but by how it's told. When tense becomes tension, when past becomes presence, when memory becomes prophecy. By now, you've seen how mixed tenses twist the thread of time. You've felt how the present pulls you in, how the past drags you deeper, and how their collision creates a kind of narrative gravity of force that holds your audience tighter with every shift. But here's where it all comes together. This final beat, the moment where every tense past, present, and future clashes in one single scene. And you realize the structure was the story all along. Because at the end of every powerful narrative, the truth emerges. And the way it's revealed, the tense it's delivered in, can change everything. Let's break it down. You've followed a character across time. You've seen them speak in the now, haunted by what was. You've seen flashbacks invade quiet moments, regrets shaping every choice. And then comes the climax. That one scene where everything comes to a head. The secret is out. The moment they've run from finally arrives, and in that moment, the tenses don't just shift, they bleed together. He stands in the doorway. He had been here once before when the house still smelled like her perfume, when the windows still let in the morning light. He knows he won't come back again. One paragraph, 3 tenses, past, present, future. And yet, it feels whole, complete, because this is what the story has been building toward, not just what happens, but how time itself collapses around. That final choice. In The Chosen, you'll see this technique sharpen like a blade in the final episodes, especially as Jesus' crucifixion nears. Every moment feels like it's happening now. He's being betrayed, he's bleeding, he's breaking. But then we hear a disciple speak in the past tense. We loved him, we followed him. And suddenly, the death hasn't just happened, it's already remembered, already mourned, as if history is folding in on itself. That's the power of layered tenses. They make the story inevitable. Even if the scene is happening now, the past tense reminds us it's already lost. Even if the character speaks in hope, the future tense says it won't last. And even if we're rooted in a flashback, a single present tense verb can resurrect it, make it hurt all over again. This is where thrill lives, not just in what the characters know, but in what the audience feels. The suspense doesn't just come from what's going to happen, it comes from when you'll be forced to realize it. Already did. Think about the moment in a story where a character realizes something too late. Maybe it's a betrayal. Maybe it's a confession. Maybe it's just the quiet realization that the person they loved isn't coming back. Now, look at how the tenses play out. I trusted him. I trust no one now. I will never trust again. Each sentence steps across time, and each one deepens the emotional cut. Because this is no longer just a plot twist. It's a timeline twist. It's the revelation that the past wasn't just back, it was a warning. And the present isn't safe. It's a consequence. This is what makes mixed tenses devastating. They allow you to tell the truth 3 different ways: what it was, what it is, what it means going forward. And if you've trained your audience well. If you've used these shifts with purpose, they feel that weight without needing to be told. They recognize the rhythm, they hear the echo, they hold their breath because the final tense hasn't hit yet. The one that says it's over. But here's the secret no one talks about. Sometimes, the most powerful stories never end in the present. They end in the past. As if the final scene already happened. As if you were only just remembering it, because that's the ultimate emotional punch. It tells your audience, this is no longer a possibility. It's a memory. Final, irreversible, gone. And that's where the real grief settles in. Not because of what you saw, but because of how it was told. You didn't just experience the story. You lived it backwards and forwards, again and again. Until every tense collapsed into one overwhelming truth. It mattered. It all mattered. And even now, it's still happening inside you. Because the best stories don't end when the screen fades to black. They echo. And it's the shift in tense, the subtle flicker from now to then, that plants that echo in your chest and lets it ring for days, weeks, years after. So if you're a storyteller, if you're writing scripts, novels, videos, documentaries, even interviews, don't be afraid to break the timeline. Don't be afraid to pull your audience into the past, jolt them back to the present, whisper to them from the future. Use the tenses like doors. Open them, slam them, leave some cracked just enough for a shadow to slip through. Because if you do it right, they'll follow. Not just to the end, but after. And that is the kind of story that never lets go.